Welcome back to another vlog of me editing my book Rules of Survival. If this is your first time here, Rules of Survival is my current sci-fi space horror novel, loosely inspired by franchises like Alien and Resident Evil. To put it simply, it's zombies in space with a side of romance. In my last vlog on Rules of Survival, you'll have seen that I finally started writing draft 2, so I had been prepping for this new draft for a little while now, and I think I did like 3 vlogs ahead of it. One where I was rereading myself and just taking notes in the printed manuscript. Another one where I decided to take all of these notes and redo or improve my world building notes on Notion and make more of them. And then finally one where I did a full reverse outline using the story grid as a method. So yes, I finally started writing this draft in the last vlog, and I also had a mini crisis where I couldn't figure out what my structure was anymore, which I have solved, I guess, by making a new structure using the classic method of 3 acts that are actually 4 acts in disguise. But I also discovered that I had more of a 5-part book. It might not be acts, maybe they're just sections or parts, but this is what we're working with, and I realized that all of my parts were divided by a sort of discovery / big reveal that then leads to a decision being made by my main character. So Act 1 also matches Part 1 of my own personal structure, and the end of it was when my main character Themis reinforces her decision that she's gonna go on this trip and she's gonna be the captain of Mission Lazarus. So we're now gonna focus on Part 2, which is gonna be the next 10-ish scenes. I think I've got 11 scenes in that part, and it essentially spans from the moment that my main character Themis officially acts as captain as they board the Carpathia, and then we get to the pinch point of this part, which is when they discover the graveyard of ships that are surrounding the planet that they're aiming for, Panacea, and realize that Vortex, the pharmaceuticals company that sent them on this mission, had been in fact sending a bunch of other crews throughout the year, and that they all died and never came back. So when they discover that, it's the big reveal of that part, which will then lead to the next decision, what I'm calling the second decision, essentially, and this is the vote to decide to stay on Panacea despite what they've discovered. So that's what we're going to work with. It's basically most of the scenes that are on the Carpathia and the very early scenes arriving on Panacea. So this is before the decision to chill and explore. And now I'm gonna have one new scene in this part, which is on the Carpathia, so on the ship. There's gonna be some extra scenes. I'm thinking I need to figure out what they're doing in the scene, but I kind of know what the dialogue is gonna be like. So the new scene I'm gonna write is essentially after Axel teaches Themis a personal little lesson in shooting and running at the same time, which I'm very excited to write. There's a scene where I think this is where there's more interactions with Freddy and Saturn, who are sort of telling Themis off for being so rude to Isabel, because this is one of the big changes I've decided to make in draft 2, is that Isabel is not so obviously a villain, and I want her to be a lot more nice towards Themis, but Themis is really suspicious of it and doesn't really understand her own feelings about why she's suspicious and why she's so cold towards her ex-fiance's new girlfriend, apart from that being the reason. So she's scared that she still has remnants of feelings for Carson, but she doesn't. So I wanted to write more around her interactions with Freddy and Saturn, develop their friendship, and I kind of felt like the conflict within this scene could be this, and it could reveal more of the way they interact with each other as well. Anyway, that's not a problem for today. Today is Tuesday the 10th of March, so we're starting part 2. We've got 10 scenes, 11 scenes to write, in fact, and we're going to start with the first one, which is chapter 6. Don't look where you're not supposed to. Let's get cracking and get some words in. Today is Monday the 16th of March. I'm currently into draft 2 in Act 2, Part 2, whatever we want to call it, sitting at 25,187 words. And we're also currently in scene 12. Reminder that this act covers scenes 10 to 20. So we're in scene 12. We've only done 2 scenes and we're in the middle of the 3rd one. However, I'm quite far into this one, so I will be done with it either tonight or tomorrow night. I've made a little calendar view as well to see where I'm going with this part 2 and when I would finish it, because I'm trying to finish it by the end of this month and I think it's doable. So my current plan is to be done with this scene tonight or tomorrow, scene 13 within this week, and then scenes 14 and 15 this weekend, this upcoming weekend. My next 2 scenes are sort of semi-problematic. They're not really problematic, but I had some thinking around them. So they're chapter 8 from draft 1. However, I made the 2 scenes 10 and 11, so the ones I've just written, I split into 2 different chapters because the word count was higher this time around, and I feel like it made more sense because there was definitely a change of location and everything, and so I felt like scene 10 was its own chapter, scene 11 could be its own chapter, so it became chapter 7. Which means that the current scene I'm writing in, which was meant to be chapter 7, is now chapter 8. Anyway, that makes sense to me. The scenes after that are meant to be within the same chapter, but they're from 2 different POVs. They're from Axel's POV and then Themis's POV, and it's because what happens is the scene I'm writing now, they're in the gym, and they're doing this exercise with the guns and everything, so that Themis is teaching them, well, Axel is teaching them and Themis is running this game, to run and shoot at the same time, because that's essentially what they will have to do if they encounter zombies, and so she's trying to prepare them by pretending it's a game. So they're in the gym doing this, and then the scene after is supposed to be Carson and Isabel sort of tell Themis off for the exercise. It's mostly Carson, and Isabel just stands there. Basically tell her, what are you thinking? Like, what is this bullshit? Why are we doing this? Blah, blah, blah. And Axel overhears it, which is why it's from his POV. And then the scene after is from Themis's POV, where Axel teaches Themis to run and shoot at the same time, and then he asks her some questions about Lovelace. He starts understanding whatever they're gonna find in Panacea is not gonna be good. I've got that scene from Themis's POV because there's a bit of flirty banter that I wanted to have her experience from and not from Axel's experience. And I like that it was from her POV, and I kind of want to keep that. But the scene makes a lot more sense to be in Axel's POV because it's him who grows from curious to concerned. And it should be from his POV that we get this information and not the other way around. So I was thinking initially what I was going to do is change the scene's POV from Themis to Axel and have the 2 scenes within the same chapter be from Axel's POV. I've decided otherwise. In order to keep what I wanted to do, I think what I'm going to do is change the order of things. So within the chapter I'm currently writing, I might add on a second scene, which will be Themis gets taught how to shoot by Axel and experiences a little bit of that flirty banter. But then that's where it stops, and it's like there's no questioning of Lovelace or anything, blah, blah, blah. But then Themis gets called by Carson afterwards, which will add more like sort of tension, because Carson will also be jealous or something of having seen Axel teaching her how to shoot. So maybe he's seen that, a little bit of it, and so that's, you know, over on top of what he's accusing her of. So the second chapter will be from Axel's POV, him overhearing Themis defending him while he's like tidying up everything and putting everything back together, because now the sessions are properly finished. He's both done with the exercise that the whole crew was a part of and teaching Themis individually. So instead of having that happen in between, it makes more sense for it to happen afterwards. And it's like Carson hung around or like went to shower and then came back or something. Afterwards, Themis comes back in, puts the data into Lovelace, and Axel gets to ask her questions about it. And so it's all from his POV, the information we need to get, and I get to add my little flirty banter thing in Themis's POV, tagging it at the end of a scene that exists so that it doesn't have to be its own scene. That makes so much more sense. I'm so happy to have thought of that. Now that I've told you about it, I need to go write that down because I'm going to forget, but I needed to talk through it to understand my own thought process. I'm excited for that change. This is great. Today's the 29th of March, Sunday, and I have 3 days left and 3 scenes left. Technically, I'm in the middle of one of these 3 scenes, and I can finish it today for sure, and then I have like 2 scenes left and 2 days left, so I don't really know how I'm gonna do that, but I can try. I can attempt this. I did write a ton yesterday because I was on trains for like 2 hours of the day, and I wrote on the train on one way and then on the train back as well, so I did quite a lot of progress. And I'm now left with these 3 last scenes. But I'm again getting to the conclusion that I might have to move some things around just in terms of passages that need to be shifted from one scene to another. So currently everyone's sort of like, they've arrived on Panacea, on Ambrosia Alpha, and they've put a drone through to go take a look at the first habitat that they're linked to with the shuttle, which is the crew quarters. They find a bit of blood in one of the rooms, and that's it. So they're now like, okay, the habitat is secure enough that we can go in and physically secure it, and then we can move on to the next habitats, and Themis suggests doing the kitchen and mess first, and then the control room and the infirmary second. Those are the 3 habitats they're going to secure in these scenes, and then afterwards what happened is she then puts it down to a vote. Are we staying? Are we going back to the ship, to the mothership, and abandoning this place and leaving it behind and not fulfilling our mission? That was the original plan, and I still think I want to have a little bit of this, but she did already put it through a vote in a previous scene now that is new, which was when they were on the ship, on the Carpathia, and she told everyone, here's the deal, people are dead. We're going in and people are dead, but they're infected and they're still walking around. She told them this, no one truly believed her, and the people who were there argued that, you know, we can still save them. Freddie still said something about making a cure, so she doesn't believe that they're dead, etc. But now that they're there, everyone is freaked out and already acting a little bit more, should we actually go in? And she's like, you wanted this, we're going in. Because the vote scene has already somewhat happened, it's almost like I'm splitting it into 2. A little bit like what Themis did in the first part, where she's given information, makes a decision, some more shit happens, it's basically the debate scenes, and then she reinforces her decision. And I think this is the same thing, but the entity this time is the crew instead of Themis. So the crew is given new information, they make a decision based on that. There's more scenes that happen in between, debate scenes, and then they reinforce their decision. So what I need to do is kind of shift some things around. The scene I'm in right now, we're now going into the habitat physically, and I feel like that in itself feels like a separate scene from the one I have been writing. And so I kind of almost want to put that into my reverse outline so that it's a little bit clearer what I'm doing. And then the next 2 scenes are essentially Themis telling the crew that they need to think about whether they want to stay or go. So like giving them the second time/option to vote whether to stay or go. And then the scene after is the crew votes to stay, and Axel implements like a pairing system and everything. And that's a different chapter. So we're currently within the same chapter. I kind of feel like I need to rejig this, and I need to have a little think about how I'm going to rejig this. Not by much, but just moving around which scenes are with which scenes. What I'm getting out of the voting scene, what should I keep, what should I leave off because we've already addressed that in the previous voting scene? How do I make it different enough that it doesn't feel like a repeat of the same scene? All of these things. So I need to have, I think, a writing down session like I did last time for my structure, and physically write down the points and what I'm gonna do with them, because I'm confusing myself. However, I do feel like there's essentially half of the scene I'm in currently is exploring the habitat and clearing them, and then the next scene is exploring the habitats and clearing them. So I feel like that in itself should be one scene altogether. It would make a lot more sense than currently what I'm doing, where it's part of another scene where something else happens, and then we have a separate scene, a split one, where they do the same thing again. I want to mix and match them together. So that's my next step. I'm gonna write down what I'm moving, what I'm keeping, etc. Today's the last day of the month. It's the 31st of March. It is now close to 11 o'clock at night. It's 10:40 p.m. and I have just finished the last scene that I wanted to do in this part 2, act 2. And oh my god, we have just reached 45,160 words in total for draft 2. I really struggled with these last couple of scenes because I mixed and matched things from 2 different chapters so much that I was just like, I'm gonna forget what I've done and where I've placed what, and I'm still concerned about that, but I will reread myself and will determine later whether I did this right or wrong and if there's anything to fix in post. But I'm pretty happy with it, and I feel like it makes more sense like this and it's less boring. There was one scene I found boring before where Themis has a little bit more thinking time by herself in her room and is essentially like growing from like scared about what it means that there are 6 ships that are dead in orbit and how many people came from these ships that are probably dead and infected and walking around. So she grows from scared thinking about that to determined to blow the place up with her dirty bombs that she's brought with her. But in reality, the scene felt a little bit like, okay, I need some alone time for my character, for her to think about things. And it just felt a little bit like it was done on purpose and like not natural. It just did not flow naturally, I think. This feels better now. There's still that moment where she's by herself, but it's barely there. And here's the last passage of that chapter where I have put this in this time. I store my suit away, leaving the helmet at the bottom of the closet space with it. Then I sit on the bed and turn Lovelace back on. Lovelace, input new parameters for the simulation. 6 ships sent over to Panacea over the span of the last year, with an approximate crew number from 6 to 10 per ship. My AI doesn't reply, having no voice in this environment, but words appear down the screen on my comms. The numbers come in after a few minutes, but I don't need to see them. With this many infected, our chances of survival are close to 0. I think back to the cargo I brought with me, stored safely inside the Ruston. The exocases were supposed to use to source samples of the substance, filled instead with custom-made ray guns, ammunitions, cannons, and PV-60 dirty bombs, a cocktail made specifically for the dead of Panacea. I hoped I wouldn't have to use them, but now I know for a fact Vortex isn't planning on stopping their operations anytime soon. So instead, I will have to be the one to stop them. I feel like this has so much more impact and it's so much clearer that she grows determined, and that was like my value shift that was supposed to happen in this scene that I kind of felt was a little bit lost and just did not truly take place. So I feel a lot more confident about the end of the scene. I also feel a lot more confident about it being the end of a part, because this is the reinforced decision moment that I wanted to have within this scene, because I managed to skip having a second voting scene, but I did have a second discussion scene in a way. That's kind of a mirror scene from the one they have on the Carpathia, where she gives them a vote whether they want to go or not. But I was concerned about how I was going to handle this secondary discussion now that they know about all the ships, that they've decided to go in, that they're finding the habitat that they're entering at first is clear, there's no one there, it's empty, so there's no immediate danger. So they decide, like, should we stay, should we try and figure out what happened and investigate and try to find the dead, etc. So instead of it being a discussion that happens because they have to put a second vote in, it's just a discussion, and then it kind of ends with like, more hints towards the fact that Carson knew that Vortex was sending ships over. I have this moment where he snaps, which I really like. Carson, Isabel says, staring at his face, pale as a sheet, almost greenish. Are you okay? They did this on purpose, Axel says, more statement than question. They knew they were sending those teams into a death trap, and they knew none of those teams came back when they decided to send us, I say, bitterness coating my tongue. We're Hail Mary, Carson says, choking on his own words. Don't you get it? He stares at me, eyes wild, unblinking. We're a last-ditch effort to save anyone left, anyone still alive. Everyone stares at us in silence. Then where is everyone? I ask slowly, calmly. Who's left to save, Carson? Carson gets up suddenly, the chair he's on scraping loudly on the floor. Everyone looks up at his face, angry, scared, confused. Kovac was here, he says, pointing at the window. He was right here. Where are the damn bodies if everyone else died from this so-called infection, Themis? Where are they? I don't reply, letting the silence immerse him until he brings his arm and finger down by his side, breathing heavily. Good question, I want to say. Where did they all go? Even if the dead can walk, this place is locked down for anyone who can't use door scanners. Instead, I squint at Carson in silence. There it is again, that flicker of guilt in his eyes as he throws accusations left and right. Does he hate himself so much for following my orders? Or is it something else? Which I felt like was a good hint at the fact that he knows something more that he's not letting on. But I'll have to review those scenes later on once I've actually introduced the moment where it's revealed that he knew. Because sometimes that's necessary. It's just you have to do it in reverse to make sure that you've correctly placed your Chekhov's gun. So yeah, that's it for this update and therefore for this vlog, because that was the end of part 2, which means I'm done. I can take a small respite, a small rest, because I have a lot of plans in April, but I do still plan on writing. It's just that the scenes I've planned in my calendar for when I'm going to be writing them are a lot more scattered throughout the month. So I have a lot more breaks in between because I know that I'm traveling a lot. And it's going to be more difficult to write during those times because although I do enjoy travel writing, while I'm in the actual spots where I'm going to, I will absolutely not have any time to write because I'm going to my best friend's hen do and then her civil wedding, and I'm going on holiday visiting things, so I won't have much downtime to actually sit down and write. But I hope that you enjoyed this update, and if you did, please leave a like and a comment. I will see you guys in the next one.